My family asked me to never contact them again, so I canceled the deposits, froze the family fund, and let them face the consequences. The next day, my sister desperately called me 13 times. There's a sound money makes when it vanishes. It's the silence of a phone that stops ringing. My family asked for space, and I gave them all the space in the world. But when the bank called my uncle, and the police showed up at my sister's door, that's when they remembered my number. Except this time, I didn't answer. I'm 32 years old, male, and make about $165,000 a year, not including quarterly bonuses that, in good years, push me past $200,000. I've been in this industry since graduating college. I started at the bottom as a project estimator, making $35,000, and worked my way up to running multi-million-dollar commercial construction projects. It was a hard road, 70-plus hour weeks, impossible deadlines, leading teams of over 50 people, and solving problems that, if mishandled, could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. My family situation is, let's say, complicated. My dad has been between opportunities for over 10 years, a polite way of saying he lives on the couch, convinced the perfect job will appear any day now. He's 58 and hasn't held a steady job since the 2008 recession wiped out his sales career. My mom works part-time at a local jewelry store and barely makes around $18,000 a year when she decides to go in regularly. The store is one of those boutiques that sells ridiculously expensive accessories to ladies who think spending $200 on a bracelet makes them sophisticated. My sister, Natalia, 29, is convinced she's going to be Instagram famous. She has 2,800 followers who watch her posts of coffee cups and fake designer bags she pretends are real. She's never lasted more than 8 months at any job. She quit a receptionist position because answering phones wasn't for her, got fired from a retail store for constantly being late, and walked out of a hostess job because a customer was rude to her. She cycles through boyfriends frequently, almost always based on their bank account or the car they drive, and has the same grasp of finances as a kid let loose in a candy store with an unlimited credit card. But of course, she's the baby girl, the princess who, according to my parents, can do no wrong, so she can't be criticized or held accountable. About 6 years ago, when my career really started taking off, I made what I now recognize was a monumental mistake, financially helping my family. At first, it seemed natural. My dad needed to fix the transmission on his old pickup, $2,800, and I paid without a second thought. My mom's credit cards were maxed out from her compulsive shopping, so I covered the $3,200 she owed. Natalia had run out of money after blowing her entire paycheck on new clothes and was about to be evicted. I paid her overdue rent of $1,650. At the time, I felt great, the successful one, the helper, the family savior. My parents seemed proud of my achievements. Natalia even answered my calls and treated me with something resembling respect. For a brief moment, it felt like we were a functional family. But I learned a fundamental lesson I wish I'd known earlier: when you help people continuously, they stop seeing it as an act of generosity and start viewing it as your obligation. What began as emergency assistance turned into a permanent safety net, and without realizing it, I was no longer helping, I was funding the lifestyle they chose. What were once occasional expenses became a monthly expectation. My dad's car, for example, would mysteriously need expensive repairs every 3 months. My mom always had some unexpected expense that conveniently coincided with her desire to redecorate the house or buy new furniture. Natalia turned financial manipulation into a kind of performance art. It was a real spectacle. She'd call me at work crying, saying her rent was due in 2 days, that she had no money, was about to be homeless, that this was the last time she'd ask for help. She'd describe a drama fit for a soap opera: sleeping in her car, losing everything, having to move back in with our parents in utter humiliation. The level of emotional manipulation was surgical. And without fail, 2 weeks later she'd be on Instagram at luxury spas, expensive restaurants, or on weekend trips with her boyfriend of the moment. The same person who claimed she was about to sleep in her car would post pictures with $15 cocktails and designer sunglasses, as if she'd never had a financial worry in her life. But the real problem was Uncle Ernesto, my dad's older brother, who declared himself the family's financial expert. This man thought he was some kind of Warren Buffett because he worked at an accounting office for a while in the 90s. Since our grandfather Fernando passed away 5 years ago, he's been the primary trustee of the family estate, responsible for managing around $385,000 in investments, properties, and assets built over a lifetime of work. His management philosophy, it seems, consisted of treating that legacy as his personal entertainment fund. Gambling trips to Atlantic City, a fishing boat he couldn't afford on his pension, various failed business ventures that needed temporary infusions from the family fund, all financed with the money he was supposed to be preserving for the family's future. And the worst part was that none of them seemed grateful. There were no apologies, no acknowledgement of the sacrifices I was making, just demands, as if I were a luxury ATM that dispensed cash whenever someone punched in the right emotional combination. My role, it seemed, was to fix all their financial problems while they continued to make irresponsible choices. I remember perfectly the moment I realized just how trapped I was in this dynamic. It was last year's Thanksgiving dinner. I spent nearly $3,000 to organize everything at an upscale restaurant, just because my mom wanted to create memorable core memories. There I was, watching Natalia take pictures of every single dish for Instagram, including the $110 bottle of wine I paid for. My dad was complaining about his pickup truck, the same one I'd helped finance. My mom was talking about a trip to Mexico, which I already knew I'd end up paying for. And then Natalia looked at me with a blank expression and said, "Samuel, you're so lucky you don't have real problems. It must be wonderful to make so much money in construction and not have to worry about anything. You're just lucky." As if my success had fallen from the sky. As if I hadn't spent the last 15 years working myself to the bone, meeting impossible deadlines, dealing with insomnia and anxiety from the stress, constantly staying on top of new technologies and management strategies so that my own sister could reduce it all to a simple stroke of luck. That was the moment I knew I needed an escape plan. I never imagined I'd have to enact it so soon, and that's exactly when my best friend, Leo, entered the picture. He was the only person who, from the start, saw clearly how my family was manipulating me. We met in college during our engineering program. Our friendship was born during long nights fueled by coffee, formulas, and that shared stubbornness to make it in life, even though we both came from homes where financial support was virtually non-existent. In the end, I specialized in project management, while Leo took a more entrepreneurial path. He founded a small but growing consultancy focused on process and systems optimization for mid-sized companies. Leo has a sixth sense for detecting lies and manipulation. Maybe he developed it from what he experienced in childhood. For years, he observed my family's dynamic and was never afraid to voice his concerns, though he always did so with care, not judgment. "Dude, your family sees you as a walking ATM," he'd say every time I mentioned paying for something for them. "How long has it been since they asked how you are? If you're tired? What your career goals are?" It's always just a high followed by a new sob story and a disguised demand. I used to downplay it. To me, family loyalty came before everything, and I genuinely believed helping them was the right thing to do. But Leo kept a detailed record of it all, literally. He noted down every time I mentioned giving money to someone, and one day, without warning, he showed me a surgically precise spreadsheet, over $78,000 given away in just 3 years. $78,000. Think about that, more than many people make in an entire year. And I had just transferred it all to people who were not only ungrateful but acted like it was my natural duty. "They're bleeding you dry," Leo warned me during our last serious conversation about the subject. "And the worst part is they don't even respect you. You're not a son or a brother anymore, you're the sponsor. The financial life preserver. They've reduced you to a wallet with a voice." Leo has a brutal frankness, it hurts, but it's helpful. He also has an impressive ability to solve problems creatively, which would end up being essential in everything that followed. He knew real poverty, not the rough patch my dad, Raul, always talked about, but real hardship. Raised by a single mother with 4 kids, who worked multiple shifts as a cleaner and waitress. His father abandoned them when he was just 11. Leo paid for college with scholarships, student loans, and overnight shifts at a 24-hour gas station, studying between customers, often at 3 in the morning. That's why, when he saw how my family was taking advantage of my success without giving anything in return, he was outraged. Not out of envy, but out of a sense of justice. "Your problem," he told me one night while we were gaming online, is that you're using the wrong strategy. You're playing chess, and they're playing checkers. They use emotions to manipulate you, and you respond with logic. They tell you a sob story, and you answer with a check to fix it. You're letting them use their own rules against you. Then what do you suggest? I asked. That you stop playing by their rules and start thinking like a strategist. You're a project manager, right? You solve complex problems every day, coordinate teams, foresee failures, so start treating your family situation like another project that needs to be solved. At first, I laughed, thinking he was exaggerating. But that conversation planted a seed. The idea of applying the same analytical thinking I used at work to my own family was as logical as it was terrifying. And 2 weeks later, everything fell apart because of a simple text message, a message that would completely change the course of my life. It was March 22nd, at 4:12 p.m. I remember precisely because, at that moment, I was reviewing architectural blueprints for a major commercial project when my phone buzzed with a notification from the family group chat, a notification that, unbeknownst to me, would forever sever my ties with them. The message came from my mom Claudia's phone. "We've all talked and we think it's time for you to step back from the family's financial management. We can handle it ourselves. Please don't contact us for a while. We need space to sort things out without outside interference." I stared at the screen, not knowing how to react. I read and reread the message several times, hoping it was a mistake or that she'd sent it to the wrong person. But a few minutes later, Natalia replied with a string of celebratory emojis. And my dad, Raul, liked the message, as if they just announced good news. They had fired me. Just like that, without any warning, as if being a son and brother was a job you could be let go from. And I knew exactly what had caused it. 3 weeks earlier, I had asked Uncle Ernesto, the trustee of the family estate funds, to explain some suspicious withdrawals I'd seen in the latest quarterly statement. I didn't make accusations, I didn't create drama, I just asked for clarity. "Can you explain these transactions and what they were used for?" Apparently, asking for accountability regarding Grandpa Fernando's money was an invasion of privacy. To them, it was an act of control, an affront to their autonomy. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. These people had used me for years as a financial safety net, expecting me to bankroll all their irresponsible decisions without offering even a shred of real support in return. And the day I asked one simple question, "What is Grandpa's money being used for?" I became the enemy. The first thing I did was call Leo. My hands were shaking as I dialed his number. "This can't be real," he said as soon as I finished reading the message word for word. "They actually did it. They cut you out like you were an employee." "I can't believe it either," I replied. "After everything I've done for them, all the money I've given, every favor." "Stop," Leo interrupted firmly. "Actually, this is the best thing that could have happened. They just gave you the perfect justification to cut them off for good. Now there are no doubts. They showed you exactly who they are and what they really feel about you. And what about family loyalty? Where does that fit?" I asked, still trying to rationalize it. "Loyalty? Are you talking about your sister posting pictures from luxury destinations while you pay her basic bills? Or your parents, who haven't shown real interest in your life or gratitude for years? Or your uncle, who's been siphoning money from your grandfather's estate and still has the nerve to call you controlling for asking questions?" That last sentence hit me like a punch in the gut. "What are you saying, Leo? You told me yourself he bought a boat with estate money. That's not a simple administrative error. It's theft. Direct theft from a dead man's inheritance. Then what do we do?" I asked, unable to hide my anger. "You're not facing this alone. I've spent years watching them exploit you and was just waiting for the right moment to help you confront them. Well, that moment has arrived." Leo's energy was contagious, but deep down, I was still hesitant. Part of me thought maybe it would be better to just walk away silently, leave it all behind. But then he spoke in a serious tone. "Listen carefully. These people took advantage of your effort and your generosity for years, and the moment you asked for something basic like transparency, they discarded you without a second thought. They don't deserve your consideration or your protection anymore. What they deserve now are consequences. And the worst part was, he was right. For 3 years, I had been the family ATM, and all it took was asking for a little clarity to become their number one enemy. All right, I replied, feeling something shift inside me. Where do we start? First, we assess the damage. Do you still have access to their accounts and services? At that moment, I smiled for the first time since receiving the message. In their haste to cut me out, they had made a fatal mistake. They forgot to remove me from the financial controls. That same night, Leo showed up at my apartment with his laptop, several energy drinks, and the determination of a military operation. He called the plan the family audit, and we began listing every account, service, or financial system I still had access to. The list was much longer than I'd imagined. We discovered I was an authorized user on my parents' main checking account access they'd given me years ago when Raul's credit was shot. I had the online banking credentials because I was the one who helped them open the accounts and set up automatic payments. Furthermore, I was the primary account holder for our family cell phone plan, the car insurance, and 6 utilities, including water, electricity, gas, and internet. Most importantly, I had full access to the shared cloud storage containing Uncle Ernesto's legal estate documents and sensitive financial records. And, believe it or not, I was still listed as the contingent trustee on Grandpa Fernando's will, something I seemed to be the only one who remembered. This is gold, Leo remarked, scanning the statements. It was worse than I thought. In the last 6 months, Uncle Ernesto had withdrawn over $30,000 from the estate for personal expenses. Raul had overdrawn the family account 11 times, racking up hundreds in fees. Claudia, meanwhile, had accumulated over $3,500 in compulsive shopping from TV home shopping channels. But what truly froze my blood was discovering Natalia's actions. She had been using a credit card linked to my primary account. Purchases at luxury boutiques, restaurants, spas, all without my knowledge. Samuel, she's literally been stealing from you for months, Leo said, checking the transactions. Look at this, $750 at Louis Vuitton, $100 at a downtown boutique, $420 on brunch, $280 on massages. She's been living like a queen on your dime. The most damning evidence, however, was of Uncle Ernesto's mismanagement. Leo cross-referenced the trust's legal documents with transaction histories and built a solid case for fraud. This isn't carelessness, it's misappropriation, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty, he stated, pointing at the screen. He used estate money for the down payment on that boat. He made mortgage payments with the trust funds. A $9,200 withdrawal matched exactly the weekend he posted photos from Atlantic City. How can you be so sure? I asked. Leo opened my uncle's social media profile with the smile of someone piecing together a detective thriller. He had posted timestamped, geotagged photos at the Borgata Casino. It matched the withdrawal perfectly. Same date, same amount. Irrefutable proof. We spent 4 hours meticulously documenting every finding. Leo created an encrypted folder on his server and uploaded copies of every statement, suspicious transaction, and any document that could serve as evidence. By the time we finished, we had what could be considered a complete criminal dossier. There, said Leo, leaning back with a victorious air. This is enough to sink them financially and legally. And now, what are you going to do with this information? I asked, as a glacial clarity settled over me. I want them to feel exactly what they made me feel, used, betrayed, taken advantage of, and utterly powerless. Perfect, Leo said, nodding with conviction. But we need to act intelligently. We can't burn it all down at once. We have to apply progressive pressure so they understand exactly what they're losing and why. He explained the so-called cascade strategy. First, slowly cut off their access to my funds and lines of credit, so they feel financial tension without immediately understanding the source. Then, terminate, one by one, the services and accounts I was funding, forcing them to take on basic responsibilities. Finally, expose Uncle Ernesto's fraud to the authorities and let the criminal justice system handle the rest. And Natalia? I asked. Leo smiled with an almost devilish expression. Oh, I have specific plans for your dear sister, he said with heavy intent. She's built a life of appearances with your money while treating you like trash. It's high time she felt the real world. We decided to start with small but strategic moves that would snowball. The first play was to call my cell phone carrier and remove my entire family from my plan. No warnings, no explanations, no chance to arrange an alternative. Their phones simply stopped working mid-conversation. In less than 3 hours, my inbox was flooded with over 20 missed calls and 40 text messages from various family members, all frantically trying to understand why their phones had suddenly been cut off. Some were confused. Did you forget to pay the bill? Others were more demanding. Fix this right now. And the most desperate ones, I need my phone for work, Samuel. Please. I didn't respond to a single one. The next step was to remove myself as an authorized user from all the utility accounts: electricity, gas, internet, water, everything that had been automatically charged to my credit card. I called each company, canceled the payments, and informed them I was no longer responsible for those services. The beauty of this method, Leo explained, excitedly, is that they can't blame you directly. It all looks like a series of administrative issues. They have no way of knowing it's part of a plan. They'll have to solve each problem separately, without seeing the connection between them. The third step involved the car insurance. For years, my entire family had been included on my multi-car policy because it was significantly cheaper. So, I called my broker and had them removed from the policy, effective immediately. That's when things got really interesting. The next day, my dad, Raul, got pulled over by the police on his way to the hardware store. It was a routine traffic stop. What should have been just a minor warning turned into a disaster when the officer verified his vehicle had no active insurance. Result: a $450 fine, his car impounded on the spot, and his license suspended until he could provide proof of new coverage. He called me screaming, furious, convinced the insurance company had made a mistake and demanding I fix everything immediately. I didn't answer, I let it go straight to voicemail. Meanwhile, Natalia discovered her favorite hobby, maxing out credit cards on luxury shopping, had come to an abrupt end. I contacted the credit card company, removed her as an authorized user, and began disputing all purchases from the last 6 months as unauthorized charges. The $750 Louis Vuitton bag was returned. The $1,100 shopping spree at designer boutiques was reversed. Expensive dinners, spa treatments, and a host of other luxuries vanished in an instant, refunded by the very establishments that had processed the charges. But the best part was what Leo did with her social media presence. Natalia had constructed an entire public persona based on a life of luxury and success. She constantly posted designer clothes, exclusive dinners, expensive trips, all perfectly curated to look like an aspirational lifestyle. The catch? Every single one of those items had been funded with my money. Now that I'd cut off the source, she couldn't maintain the facade. Leo, a natural strategist, had been collecting screenshots of her posts for months, building a detailed archive of her fake life. When she started posting victimized content, talking about jealous people trying to destroy her, he activated several anonymous accounts and began commenting on her posts with visual evidence. Isn't that the same Louis Vuitton bag you returned last week, accompanied by a picture of her at the customer service counter? Loving this designer lifestyle. By the way, how's your brother's credit score holding up? Wish I had a brother who paid for my massages. All of it was backed by screenshots of the disputes I had opened. It was a spectacle in its own right. Within days, the comments sections became war zones, and her followers began questioning if anything she showed was real. In 2 weeks, she lost 45% of her followers, and that was just the beginning. While financial chaos engulfed their daily lives, Leo and I prepared the final blow, presenting the authorities with proof of Uncle Ernesto's systematic fraud. Remember, I was the co-trustee of Grandpa Fernando's estate? Well, that position carries legal authority, especially when the primary trustee is embezzling funds and breaching his fiduciary duties. With Leo's help, we researched every step required to report a trustee's misconduct and compiled a dossier so solid that, according to him, would make any prosecutor rub their hands with glee. We included bank statements, receipts, social media posts, credit card transactions, behavioral patterns, everything necessary to demonstrate, beyond any doubt, that Uncle Ernesto had been plundering the estate for his own benefit for a long time. But before we detonated this legal bomb, we wanted to give them one last chance to show who they really were and what truly mattered to them. So, I drafted an email to the entire family group. The tone was formal, clear, and absolutely reasonable. Hello everyone. I've been reviewing some financial documents related to Grandpa Fernando's estate and have detected certain irregularities that require investigation. As the contingent trustee, I have a legal responsibility to look into these inconsistencies. So I sent a formal message to my Uncle Ernesto, requesting detailed explanations for several withdrawals made from the estate accounts. The request included a list of 18 suspicious transactions, totaling over $52,000. The response wasn't long in coming. It was immediate, perfectly coordinated, and exactly as Leo and I had predicted. You have no authority whatsoever to question my decisions or how I manage this estate, Uncle Ernesto replied. I've been taking care of all of this without needing anyone to supervise me or interfere. My dad Raul's reaction was even more infuriating. Samuel, you are completely out of line. Ernesto knows perfectly well what he's doing and doesn't need to justify anything to you. My mom, Claudia, quickly joined the chorus, with her usual tone. This is exactly why we asked for space. You're being controlling, disrespectful, and totally inappropriate. And of course, Natalia with her trademark lack of empathy. Can you please just leave everyone alone for once? Your obsession with money and control is terrifying. None of them bothered to question the missing money. No one showed the slightest concern about a possible fraud or mismanagement of Grandpa Fernando's legacy. They simply closed ranks and attacked me for asking legitimate questions based on real documents. Perfect, Leo said, reading the responses. They've just handed us everything we need to demonstrate that this isn't a family drama or a personal conflict. It's criminal conduct, and they're all helping to cover it up. That very afternoon, I filed formal complaints with the State Attorney General's office, alleging trustee negligence, misconduct in the performance of his duties, and possible embezzlement. I also sent all the documentation to the local district attorney and the IRS Fraud Investigation Division. How long do you think it will take for them to realize what's happening? I asked Leo. From what I've seen in other cases, he replied, in less than 48 hours Ernesto will get a very uncomfortable call from a government attorney. Inheritance fraud is taken very seriously, especially with so much documented evidence. And, as always, Leo was right. 2 days later, my dad called me, completely desperate. Samuel, what have you done? The police want to talk to Ernesto about the estate management. They froze all the accounts. Your mother is beside herself. We don't understand any of this. I fulfilled my duty, I replied calmly. I reported what the law requires when a contingent trustee finds evidence of misconduct. Nothing more, nothing less. But Ernesto said all the withdrawals were legitimate. Dad, he stole over $52,000 from Grandpa Fernando's estate to buy a boat and pay off gambling debts. The accounts weren't frozen out of revenge, but because your brother-in-law committed several crimes and violated his legal obligations. On the other end of the line, absolute silence. We need to talk about this. No, we don't need to talk about anything. You made it very clear you didn't want me involved in the family's financial affairs. Mission accomplished. I hung up the phone and immediately blocked the number. A feeling of peace washed over me, something I hadn't felt in years. The next morning, Leo woke me up with a smile on his face. Ernesto had been arrested at home and formally charged with multiple crimes: estate fraud, embezzlement of funds, and breach of fiduciary duty. The news made the front page of the local newspaper. His picture took up half the page, under the headline, "Local man charged with family inheritance fraud." The article detailed how he had stolen over $55,000 from his deceased father's estate to cover personal expenses, gambling debts, and unnecessary luxuries. From that moment on, my phone didn't stop ringing. My parents, Natalia, Aunt Veronica, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years called. I sent them all straight to voicemail. Later, I listened to the messages with Leo while we played video games and ate fast food. It was an involuntary comedy. Each person's priorities became crystal clear. My mom, between uncontrollable sobs. Samuel, please, call me. The lawyers said Ernesto could go to prison. All the accounts are frozen and we have no way to pay for a defense. We urgently need your help to sort this out. My dad, in a defeated tone. Son, we know we didn't handle this in the best way, but we're still family. Ernesto made mistakes, yes, but he doesn't deserve to end up in jail. Couldn't you drop the charges and settle this among ourselves? Natalia, desperate. This is totally insane. Ernesto is not a criminal, he just messed up with the money. Besides, they took my stuff, ruined my credit, and I can't even buy food now. Fix this mess. And the most revealing one of all came from Aunt Veronica, Ernesto's wife. Samuel, I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, but you are destroying this family. Ernesto, deep down, is a good man who made mistakes. If you had any decency or family loyalty, you'd be helping us, not attacking us when we need it most. Leo and I burst out laughing, incredulous, as we listened to all of it. None of them took any responsibility. No one apologized for how they treated me, or for using me for years. They still don't understand what's happening, Leo commented, amused. They're not troubled by what they did to your grandfather or to you. What truly bothers them is the fact that, finally, there are consequences. Think I should answer them? I asked. Not yet, replied Leo. Let them sit with it a while longer. They need to truly realize the life they lived at your expense is over. Only then will they actually change. And he was right. As the weeks passed, the magnitude of their financial dependence on me became completely evident. Without my support, their entire system collapsed spectacularly. My dad's truck was repossessed by the bank because he could no longer make the payments. My mom had to cancel the trip to Mexico, which was already planned, and started picking up extra shifts at the jewelry store just to cover basic expenses. Natalia, for her part, ended up moving back in with my parents because she couldn't afford rent with a bare minimum to survive. Her aspirations of becoming a social media influencer went down the drain when repo officers came and took away all her supposed luxury brands. That's when I discovered something even more surprising. For the last 2 years, I had been the co-signer on the lease for the house they were living in. By legally removing myself from the contract, the landlord reviewed the family's actual income and determined they no longer met the minimum requirements to remain on the property. They were given 30 days to vacate, but the bigger problem was another one, the legal costs that were quickly piling up. Uncle Ernesto was facing multiple fraud charges and urgently needed a criminal defense attorney specializing in financial crimes. That kind of defense isn't cheap. Initial estimates were around $25,000. With their finances completely ruined, they had no way of affording that on their own. That's when my dad, Raul, finally set aside what little pride he had left and came to see me in person. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was working from home. The doorbell rang, and when I checked the security cameras, I saw my dad at the door. He looked like he'd aged 15 years in just 1 month. He was wearing a wrinkled shirt, his hair was completely disheveled, and his expression screamed defeat, a far cry from the man who, years ago, lectured me about family duty and knowing my place. I decided to let him wait there for 10 minutes, watching on the monitor as he shifted nervously, likely rehearsing what his speech would be. Finally, I opened the door. "Samuel," he said, his voice almost inaudible, "please, we need to talk." "Talk about what, exactly?" "About Ernesto. About how the whole family collapsed. Or about how wrong you've been all this time?" I led him into the living room, but I didn't offer him a seat, water, or coffee. He stood there, uncomfortable, looking around the well-decorated room, the modern electronics, my clearly stable life. Everything I'd built since I stopped bankrolling irresponsible adults. "The truth is, we ruined everything," he said, his voice trembling. "We failed you for years. We took advantage of your generosity, and when you tried to set boundaries, we cut you out like you were worthless. We know that. And, although we don't deserve it, we've come to ask for your forgiveness. A sincere apology." "How desperate are you?" I asked, coldly. I watched his shoulders completely slump. His voice, laden with anguish, was clear. "We're going to lose the house in less than 2 weeks. Ernesto could get 5 to 10 years in prison if we can't get a good lawyer. Claudia is exhausted, physically and emotionally, from working double shifts. And Natalia, well, she's now considering moving to Las Vegas to work as a bar waitress because she sees no other way out." Given her destroyed credit history, I had to stifle a laugh. Natalia, who always thought she was too refined for any ordinary job, was now about to discover what it means to earn a living without depending on other people's money. "All of that sounds like problems that don't concern me," I replied bluntly. "You are absolutely right," he admitted, lowering his head. "But, even so, we hoped you might consider helping us, in spite of everything." "And why would I do that?" I asked, staring at him. For the first time since he arrived, he held my gaze. "Because you are a better person than all of us. Even after everything we did, you're still the only one with the resources and the integrity needed to get us out of this." "And what exactly are you expecting from me?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "That you help us pay for Ernesto's lawyer, that you guide us to find housing we can actually afford, and, if you have any compassion, that you let us back into your life." I pretended to think for a few seconds, just long enough for a spark of hope to appear in his eyes. Then I spoke, firmly. "You can't treat me like a walking ATM for 3 years, cut me out of your lives the moment I start demanding accountability, and then come back begging for help when everything falls apart. That's not how things work." "But we apologized," he insisted. "We're sincerely sorry." "You're apologizing now because you're desperate, not because you've truly understood what you did to me. If Ernesto weren't facing charges, if you hadn't lost control of your finances, if you could still maintain the lifestyle you had at my expense, would you be here asking for my forgiveness? Or would I still be the problem, the one who bothers you with questions?" He fell silent. He didn't need to answer. We both knew the truth. "Here's the deal," I continued, my tone final. "Ernesto is going to plead guilty, and he's going to spend a good amount of time in prison because he's a thief who stole from his own deceased father's estate. You and Mom are going to move into a home you can actually afford on your income. Natalia is going to have to find a real job and learn what life is like without the comfort of other people's money. And all of you are going to live with the consequences of treating me like a nuisance for years." "And you, what will you do?" he asked, his voice low. "Me?" I took a deep breath. "I'm going to move on with my life. Surrounded by people who value me as a human being, not as a source of income. Starting with Leo, who has been more of a brother to me than any of you." And, as if fate wanted to add a theatrical touch to the scene, Leo walked through the door at that exact moment, carrying bags of food for our gaming session. Well, if it isn't Mr. Herrera," he said with razor-sharp sarcasm. "How's the family bankruptcy coming along?" My father's face turned red, a mix of shame and suppressed anger. He didn't say a word. He simply turned around and walked out. Probably, for good.
Reddit Relics comment. Turns out, the problematic one was just the only adult in the family. Funny how when the money runs out, everyone suddenly remembers your phone number.